Well, I'd first like to thank everyone here. Thank you, Peanut Gallery. Thank you, partner. Thank you, opponents, for, I'm sure the great class you can bring. Thank you, judges, for your time. So I guess don't really need much of a roadmap here. I'm just going to get straight into it. Definitions, advantages, those sort of things. So let's go ahead and begin. All right. So the topic is resolved. The United States federal government should negotiate with North Korea. We have defined negotiate as sitting down and having talks. North Korea we have defined as the People's Republic of North Korea. The rest of the words we will be using in context. Now, are there any questions over any of the words that we'll be using? All right, excellent. So we'll just go ahead straight into it. Plan text. The United States federal government should enter into talks with North Korea to establish giving North Korea the materials and plans for a nuclear weapon. Now, our criterion here will be net benefits. And our first and sole advantage is nuclear Orientalism. And I will begin that through here with point A. The way we form nuclear discourse in our world creates a system in which we set up countries as seen as as being morally responsible for having nuclear weapons, and countries seen as too immature and irresponsible for having nuclear weapons. This is based in the logic of Orientalism. Orientalism is a system by which we come to understand Western and European beings as being rational, enlightened, and weak-produced, non-Western beings as being irrational, mystical, the Asian other. This is a certain form of racism. Let's see. Our attempts to make sure, let's see. Excuse me 1 second. All right, so right now, North Korea is seen as the ultimate embodiment of the inferior Oriental other, seen as the most irrational and irresponsible. Our attempts to make sure to allow North Korea to have a nuclear weapon is the best way of making sure of ending nuclear Orientalism. And our impacts are as follows. Orientalism destabilizes the global world order because it causes others to treat, one country to treat others as being irrational. It justifies such contentious positions as invading the Iraq based on the idea that the Iraqis are a destable government because they are, again, treated as the other through our country, through the United States. And our solvency is as follows. North Korea is seen as being the ultimate irrational state. North Korea particularly as being the Orientalized other. There are certain beliefs that they are irrational and unpredictable and crazy as the ultimate irrational states. Giving nuclear warheads will rupture that order of nuclear Orientalism, and we will stop treating them as a child and treat them with respect and responsibility. And I also want to go back, I'm so sorry. Time framing and funding will be normal means. And let's see, that will be all. Thank you very much. I can see the rest of my time.
What was your net benefit, or what was your weighing mechanism again?
Criteria was net benefits. Weighing mechanism is net benefits.
Okay, cool.
Gotcha.
Real quick roadmap. I am going to go. I'm going to go first off case with a vagueness specification, and then I believe I will go to disadvantages. And thank you everyone for coming out today. Thank you to our judges for coming and listening to the debate, because otherwise it would kind of be pointless and we wouldn't be able to get some good clash and good feedback on our debate. Thank you to the opposition. Last time we met, it was a wonderful debate, and I know this one's going to be great as well. Thank you to the Peanut Gallery. We're glad to have an audience because normally this room is kind of barren. But with that being said, thank you to my partner, of course. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, first, like I said, I'm going to run this vagueness specification, and I'm going to run it on their weighing mechanism. The government team has stood up here, and they have provided a weighing mechanism of net benefits. Net benefits to what? And they have not met their burden as the affirmative team because they have not shown us exactly what is being benefited by this weighing mechanism and by this plan. So now the burden falls to me as the leader of the opposition. And I am going to say that the new weighing mechanism will be net benefits to international security. Now, going through this, I do have my standard under this is that it's the prima facie burden of the affirmative team to give us a weighing mechanism for this debate. And my voters under this, that one, it is a moving target. If they back up here and say, well, here's our weighing mechanism, they cannot do that because they have already framed the round, and I have already given a different weighing mechanism to that, and they are not allowed to do that. My second voter is that it is the burden of the affirmative to provide a substantial weighing mechanism for us, because judges, it is your job to judge the round based on the weighing mechanism. And the weighing mechanism I'm now giving you to judge the round is international security, net benefits to international security. And my last voter under this is that it's an a priori issue. It is a first issue that you must deal with, judges, because if they do not have this, they are not prima facie, they do not have their stock issues. So therefore, they cannot win because they have not provided you with the exact criteria that they need to win under a policy round. Okay, moving on to my disadvantages. My first disadvantage under this is going to be destabilization of the Far East. Under this, North Korea has already stated that, well, for one, they do not want any foreign diplomats in their country anymore, and they have begun to move nuclear weapons that they already possess to missile launch sites in an act of war. They did this in response to the United States placing a destroyer in international waters in an attempt to deter such missiles. But North Korea has shown an act of aggression with nuclear weapons that they are ready for war. They are ready to go to war. And if you go with what the affirmative is saying, we are simply giving them more means to go to war, leading to destabilization of international safety because they have more ability to go to war. Do you have a question? Okay. Because they have this ability, it does not benefit the weighing mechanism or status quo because, as I have said, the weighing mechanism is now net benefits to international security, and that shows that they are not meeting their burden as the affirmative by being detrimental to this weighing mechanism. Moving on from that, my next disadvantage is the fall of U.S. hegemony. U.S. hegemony is the standard which the United States is held to in the international community. We cannot, as the sole superpower of the world, negotiate with an enemy or terrorist state. We have a doctrine in the United States that says we will not negotiate with terrorists. We will not negotiate with someone who moves against our allies. We would lose our role as the world's superpower because once we negotiate with one terrorist, and once we give them one weapon to possibly destabilize the entire international security, then we must negotiate, as a precedent, we must negotiate with all who make this act of aggression towards us, and that would cause a lowering of U.S. hegemony. Now, moving on from that into an economic disadvantage. Should we have this fall of U.S. hegemony, should we go and negotiate with these people, not only would we lose the trust of our allies, we would also lose the trust of our trading partners. We are currently major trading partners with China, and we are currently major allies with South Korea. Should we go against this trust that our allies have in us, we will lose major political capital by these imports and exports and trade agreements that we have with them. And we will also lose support from various powerful and developing nations, which again would go back to the Wang mechanism. It would destabilize international security. Now, going on from that, as I had said before, South Korea is a major ally of the United States, and we would lose their support if we were to negotiate and give North Korea weapons, because North Korea has already stated that they would like to attack South Korea. They would like to move against South Korea and reclaim what has been past the dividing line of their country, which we have seen divided since the Korean War. We have a defense treaty with South Korea. As allies, we are committed to supporting them against threats and against attacks against them. Should we violate this by helping North Korea, we would be breaking this defense treaty. And this defense treaty is a bilateral defense treaty with troops already committed to the support of South Korea. We have already in place an Iron Dome in South Korea, where we have already given South Korea missiles so they can block any attacks by North Korea. But North Korea can easily bypass that and attack our allies if we give them more missiles to do such with. Once again, going back to the Wang mechanism of destabilization within national security, which would cause a major harm because we are talking about going and giving an enemy nation these nuclear weapons. And then going on to their case with nuclear orientalism, they have stated that North Korea is seen as the most irresponsible and irrational country, and that is why we should give them a weapon so that they may prove that they are responsible. Am I correct? In that, prove that they are responsible with nuclear weapons?
Are you asking us to answer your question?
Yes, please. For clarification.
Oh, for clarification, yes, they are seen as the most irrational.
Are we giving them these weapons so that they may prove they are rational and responsible?
We're giving them weapons
So that-
to blow our bubble of thought.
To blow a bubble of thought against nuclear Orientalism, we're suggesting that this is the best way to stop the kind of horrid racism that's going on right now, and that through this plan, we will be able to fundamentally stop that.
All right, and going on from this, thank you very much for that clarification. If we do give them these nuclear weapons, it goes against what has already been set as a historical precedent for North Korea's irrationality and irresponsibility with weapons. In 2009, they launched an attack on South Korea's mainland. In 2008, they sunk a destroyer sent by South Korea. They have a historical precedent of violence, and we cannot trust them, which takes out your advantage to your plan under nuclear Orientalism. Because you have stated that Orientalism destabilizes world order, but it would be more destabilizing and more detrimental to the Wang mechanism should we give them these weapons so that they can continue this historical precedent of violence against allies that we have. And that would also take out your solvency point, because if we do give them these weapons, then we would simply be allowing them to prove that they are capable of these acts against our allies, and therefore taking out your solvency point and your advantage. And with that, I am out of time, and I urge a strong oppositional ballot. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Gabriel Ramirez. Thank you to my lovely and beautiful partner, Caleb. Opposition team for providing flash. Audience, sub. Right. So the order is going to be case provided by in the order provided by my partner, and then the opposites in the order of vagueness, and then the disads in order provided by the negative team. With that, let's get into this. Okay, starting off with case, let me go in and explain the criteria on net benefits. By the end of this round, whoever wins, I'll get back to that, I'm sorry. Plan text. The United States federal government should enter into talks to establish, with North Korea to establish influence materials for a nuclear warhead, meaning that at the end of the day, we're entering negotiations, we are determining when and how are we going to give North Korea the materials to build a nuclear warhead. Going through case on the first, through our advantage from point A. In the status quo, nuclear discourse is how we enter into relationships, and how we enter with relationships with other nations. If you look at the status quo, Britain, France, all the other European nations have nuclear weapons, and the U.S. does not care. However, if we're going to talk about other foreign nations, the non-European body, the imperialists are the like supposedly Orientalist nations, we're no longer trusting of them with nuclear weapons. There's no political or military trust within that domain because we and the political system existent still experience the racism of the racism that's going on. Orientalism is the political embodiment of racism and non-Western hatred within the political sphere. If you look at the status quo, we don't care if European nations have weapons, but if you look at the Middle East or Asia, we are definitely afraid of it. We otherize them, we demonize them, we know that we create political stories that they will destroy us if they ever get the military capabilities too. We also don't care, we don't care about European military because of this political embodiment of racism. Throughout this case, they said that giving them weapons means that they will attack and that there's empirics to prove this. But if you look at all the cases, in which cases like North Korea has shown military aggression, it's because we've existed within this nuclear Orientalism state where we are demonizing. We are demonizing them as enemies, and we are only provoking them. Only through actually trusting them and through showing military and political trust and ending this political embodiment of racism can we actually stop the militaristic policies that are happening. And if any reason for you to think that, like, if we gave North Korea a nuclear weapon, that they would immediately attack us because that's just what they're going to do? That is that is nuclear Orientalism, this political embodiment of racism actually acting within this room. Throughout this round, they've called them enemies and terrorists, just embodying the idea that they are this is the political racism that is happening now within the status quo. Out of the first speech, let me expect across the impacts that this Orientalism destroys global order. In a world where we are going to say that these foreign nations are the enemy, that they are the other, that they are something to be feared, we only allow for endless wars because we are constantly trying to destroy the non-European nation. Also, they extend across that this also leads to a rational treatment of other countries. We're able to justify going to war with Iraq, justify all of these atrocities in the name that it's not a European nation, that we can do this because of the political racism that's happening in the status quo, and extend across the solvency that only through giving North Korea this ultimate, through this nuclear warhead, are we able to break the bubble of thought? Are we able to break the paradigm in which we live in, that nuclear Orientalism dominates, that we can't trust these non-Western nations, only through actually giving them the ultimate country that we don't see as irrational, the ultimate power, are we able to break the bubble of thought? Are we able to say that we no longer engage in this political embodiment of racism, and that we can put our faith in other nations other than the non-European? And only through such an irrational act are we actually able to break the bubble. Okay, now on to the vagueness argument. I can do it. They said that saying net benefits is not clear. All this is saying is at the end of the round, whoever provides the most net beneficial case is the person who should take your ballot. Also, if you look at their counter-interpretation of net benefit, they say the net benefit is to maintain international security. Look at their definition of this. It's filled with nuclear Orientalism. It's filled with the political embodiment of racism that we have to protect the European nations. They say that that as a voter they have moving targets, but we're sticking to our definition of net benefits. We're not changing this, meaning that it's not a voter, but it is an evidence to show that they are still filled with the nuclear Orientalistic thought that we have to demonize these foreign nations, that there's something to be feared, there's something to be looked at because they are the evil nation that's going to bomb the crap out of us one day if they ever get the means to. Next off on their first dissat about destabilizing the Far East. This entire flow is filled with the nuclear Orientalist thought that the Oriental is the political embodiment of racism, that if they are ever going to, we have no faith in them, and that because they are the other, they are going to attack us at the first chance they get. Look at what they said. They've stated that North Korea doesn't want diplomacy because even in the status quo, we function under the nuclear Orientalist thought, which is the political racism that exists. So no one would want to engage with diplomacy with a nation that hates them. They also say that NOCO will move, North Korea has nuclear weapons in the status quo, and they're moving them to whatever. But even if you do buy that North Korea already has nuclear weapons, the idea, the functionality that they're actually weaponizing against us is because of the nuclear Orientalism that is occurring. That this political body of racism only incentivizes these demonized nations to want to engage in violence against their so-called oppressor. They said that if our government were to give North Korea a chance that we would have automatically go to war. This is the example of the political embodiment of racism that's happening within this round. It's an extension of nuclear Orientalism to the very individuals of our nation. Second disadvantage, U.S. hegemony. Their idea of hegemony is completely filled with nuclear Orientalism, that the United States has to maintain the global power in order to maintain a safe world. The idea that a European nation has to be the political power in order to make sure that enemies are terrorists, which is filled with the nuclear Orientalist logic that these others, these demons have to be kept at bay. This idea of U.S. hegemony is only filled with nuclear Orientalism and proves the impact that proves the impacts of case and the severity of case, that it's something that we have to do. We have to destroy the mindset that the Orientalist nation is something to be dealt with. The idea of U.S. hegemony is filled with it, and we have to destroy U.S. hegemony in order to engage in actual to stop this ongoing war that is going to happen because of nuclear Orientalism. On to the third disadvantage with the economy. They said the U.S. is that we have to maintain a hedge to keep trade within the Asian region, i.e., China and South Korea. The only reasons why we're fine with dealing with China and South Korea is because we're able to control them. It's an example of neocolonialism, a world in which case we still engage in nuclear Orientalism. We are actually engaging in neocolonialism. We are embodying the political racism that's occurring. We're taking control of these Asian nations and making them do our bidding. We are essentially making them trade. We have China taking on our debt, and we have South Korea doing whatever military thing we have to do with them. It's an example of the neocolonialism that spurs from nuclear Orientalism because of the very political embodiment of racism and that occurs from it. Also, yeah, throughout this round, the negative team has only served to show the extent of nuclear Orientalism within the political status quo. Only through actually doing such a radical act such as giving a nuclear weapon to North Korea are we actually able to break the paradigm that these non-European nations are dumb and demons and are the conceptualization of evil. We have to engage in actually trusting these non-Western nations in order to break the bonds of neocolonialism and nuclear Orientalism, i.e. political racism. So for that reason, you're going to vote government.
I'd like to go ahead and give a blanket of thanks to everybody for being here, Peanut Gallery, adjudicators, all for being here. Thank you to the government team for coming and giving us this case. And quick roadmap, I will address their case, and then I'll go back on our off cases and stuff like that. So with that, I'll just go ahead and begin. So basically what the government team has gotten up here and told you is that we're racist. That's all we are. We're just a bunch of political racists. All we're going to do is keep people from, being whatever. So all we do is just hold people down. Right. That's why we give $8 billion a year to a Middle Eastern country named Israel for military funding. That's why we say, hey, do what you will with it. Okay, here's weapons, here's things, defend yourself. We don't care. That's why we defend South Korea, because we're racist. Because we don't want anybody else, being big and bad. But the problem here is that they said we demonize North Korea. And, okay, you can say that, but we don't. This is a country who has proven themselves time and time again that they are aggressive, that they wish to take people out, that they have attacked. We said in 2009, we gave you a historical precedent. 2009, they shelled South Korean citizens. Why? Because they don't like South Koreans. They want back Korea, they want Japan, they want China, they want all the land in the world. They want to be world dictators. And so they, in 2008, they bombed somebody. They bombed South Korea again by taking out a cruiser. And, so they will absolutely act aggressively. They will absolutely bomb people. If we give them nuclear weapons, they will use it. Why? Because they want to. So what we came up here and we talked about, and that's basically their whole plan. And their whole plan is talking about, we're going to remove this. But they don't. They don't remove it by giving them nuclear weapons. What they do is they feed into our disadvantage by destabilizing Southeast Asia, because they have the ability to attack, and they will. And what we talked about, what my partner talked about, is they said, we don't want to talk. We don't care. Just 4 days ago, they said, everybody get out. We can't protect you. They told all diplomats to leave. Why? Because they don't care to talk. When we moved a defense system out there to keep missiles from being attacked, they took and said, okay, cool, we're going to move our missiles over to our launchers, because we're going to launch them, because that's what we do when you try to, tell us not to do that. So you lose never mind. So they don't want to talk, is the big point there, and you're going to start to destabilize Southeast Asia. We talked about our disadvantage number 2 is the fall of U.S. hegemony. If we talk with enemies or terrorist state, which they said it's racist for me to say that, but when a country has said, yeah, we're going to attack you, we're going to do it because that's what we do. And we say, no, you're not going to do that. That's not racist. That's just me saying, no, you're not going to attack me. That's not okay. And you're not going to attack my allies. They talked about how with Britain, we don't care if European countries have nukes, but that's where, the Red Scare came from. We had things like that. We did care, and we do care. But last time I checked, Britain hasn't bombed one of our allies. North Korea has. So that point falls. But by negotiating, by giving this, we do lose faith, or we lose faith in our allies lose faith in us, sorry. And so what happens is China doesn't like what North Korea is doing right now. China owns quite a bit of our debt, you're right. And so since they're not happy, maybe we shouldn't go against them, because they own quite a bit of our debt. So if our allies aren't happy with them, we should stick with our allies, because we said we're going to be allies, whereas North Korea said they're not going to be, and they're going to attack us. And they've tried. And then our third disadvantage was economic disadvantage. Again, we talked about we lose trust with our allies. North Korea has proven themselves that they will attack. In the past, they'll do it now. They're ready to do it now. And in fact, when we responded, they responded too. So they're ready to attack, and they will if we enter into, or we try to enter into talks, which they've already said we don't want to have. So unless they can fiat, both entities, it's not going to happen. And then we went back on case, and we said we see North Korea's basically they'll end racism. They don't end racism if it exists. With this political racism that they talked about, but it's not showing up. We're just being big brother and saying, hey, don't do that. That's not nice. So yeah. With that, I guess true enough. Just because I can, and I have time, and I'll talk about racism, because that's what we want to talk about, racism. Going to war increases racism. So if you want to look at their net bins, let's end racism, let's end this nuclear Orientalism, all of that. By giving these nuclear arms to North Korea, it's going to happen. We are going to enter into a war, because they've shown that they are ready and willing to use these arms that they do have, and more than likely will. So it will lead us into another war, which will increase racism. I have a personal story, because I was talking in class one day, because I'm an art therapy major, and we take psychology classes doing that. We found out in the 60s, right after Vietnam, what a human has to do to enter into a war and kill another human is they have to dehuman somebody. They have to see someone as they have to see them as subhuman. So what happens is if we give these arms, we're going to go into a war, and we're going to dehuman more. You're going to cause more racism with war. Which is what will happen if you give it. Again, our disadvantages all flow through, all of our on-case arguments fall through, and all theirs fall. And again, just a quick run over, destabilizing Southeast Asia is what will happen, was our first disadvantage. Our second was fall of U.S. hegemony. Our third DA was economic disadvantage, and then we went over their on-case. Let's look back at the weighing mechanism for just one moment. Weighing mechanism, we changed. It's a weighing mechanism of net benefits through the lens of to the international security. By giving nuclear arms to North Korea, who have proven in the past that they will use whatever arms they have, leading that they will use those arms now, decreases the international security. With that, I'll concede the rest of my time and let my partner take it over.
All right, brief little roadmap here. I'm just going to go straight down my voters and flesh them out for you and show you why exactly the oppositional team has won today. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming out here. I'm so glad to be able to debate you guys again, especially in an out round like this. Thank you to my wonderful partner for helping me get these points across. Thank you for the judges. You've been a great help to us today. Thank you for the Peanut Gallery. We absolutely appreciate all of your support. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump right into it. And under my voters, my first voter is the voter of the weighing mechanism. As I have said back in my first LO speech, this is an a priori issue. It is the first issue you as the judges must consider before you may weigh the rest of this round, because it is the most important issue in this debate. As the opposition team, the burden fell to us to give you the only way to judge this round. We have shown you that the affirmative under this was not prima facie and has not met their burden. And we have told you that we are going to have you judge this round under the weighing mechanism of net benefits to international security. And based on this weighing mechanism, we have shown how they are detrimental to the status quo. They are advocating harm to the status quo, which is directly against the burden of the affirmative team. They cannot win this debate because they are advocating harms. They are not prima facie. They are not a priori. And therefore, that is the first voter you must consider before all other issues in this debate. And it is why we, under the first point, will have one today as the opposition. My second voter is point of personal offense. The affirmative team has only given, they have only given you that, the only fact they have given you that our disadvantages and contentions do not flow through is based on an idea of racism against us as the oppositional team. They have stood up here and said that you may not give this round to us because we proliferate this idea of political racism, that we are incredibly biased, when in turn they are giving you, as the judges, a bias against us as the opposition and taking away our fairness and our grounds to debate because they are not giving us room to debate. And if we're talking about racism, you are essentially, we are trying to debate this debate for ourselves and for an educational value. But if you're saying we can't debate it, that is unfair to us, and isn't fairness the exact reference of what racism is all about? When we're here trying to have a good debate and good clash, and we can't do that because you have put a bias in the minds of the others, and my standard under that is fairness. And I have shown you that that is the only reason they have brought up against our disadvantages and against the rest of our flow, saying why it will not work. But it's the only thing they have brought up. They have not told you why they wouldn't work, simply that we can't argue them. And if we can't argue them, what's the point of having a debate? So all of our points flow through under that issue. Now going to my third voter is the voter of U.S. hegemony. We have showed you with historical precedent that the United States would lose so many advantages if we were to go into these negotiations with North Korea. We would lose our trading partners in China and Japan. China also controls our debt. We would also lose our economic partners due to this debt. We would lose trade. We would lose the ability to import and export from some of the highest producers in the world, which would be a direct going against of the weighing mechanism, which is international security. And now going into my fourth and final voter, which is a two-world analysis. In the world that the affirmative has provided for you, they are saying that we will get rid of this racism by giving these nuclear warheads to North Korea. When in fact, North Korea has proven time and time again that they are aggressive towards other nations. If they go to war with South Korea, we must intervene as the United States because we have this pact with South Korea saying that we will protect our allies from any burden or any offense. If the United States gets pulled into a war, then our allies in Europe must be pulled into a war because they have the same treaties with us. Therefore, we could pull the world into an entire world war, which would only increase racism. But in our analysis, where we are saying we cannot do this, we are directly benefiting the weighing mechanism by not giving these nukes to them and not destabilizing international security, which is what they are advocating under their plan. And with that, I'm out of time, and I urge a great and strong oppositional ballot today. Thank you.
Well, so far this has been a very interesting round. So first points should be very interesting. We said that the criterion will be net benefits. They say they have the burden to make the criteria. That's a lie. The governmental position has the opportunity to make the criterion. We made it. They disagreed. I'm sorry. We make ours. The second point that's very interesting is that we are in fact advocating harms. That's very interesting. I thought the relief of racism was a good thing. That's unfortunate. But so now the point of personal offense. We call them racist. We call them racist because their position, not necessarily the person, but their position was fundamentally racist. We are making a bias against them. That's really unfortunate that people are biased against each other. That's what we're trying to solve. Racism is wrong. I'm sorry you don't like it. So what they've said, though, is also that, in fact, because there's automatically going to be war, if North Korea gets their hands on a nuclear weapon, it will cause more racism. Do you see the fundamentally racist thing in saying that if North Korea gets a weapon, they will kill everyone? That's based on a fundamental misunderstanding for countries that are unlike the one we are in right now. We assume that they are other. We assume that they are different. We assume that they are irrational people. Well, they're people. So they make that a claim, but that's just entirely false and incredibly racist and offensive. The best way to end racism is to end racism, not to do that whatever their national security ridiculousness. We will not be starting a war. We will be saving the world from war. By ending this Oriental racism, we will be stopping that kind of degrading thing that makes us seem like the aggressors. Because we are the aggressors. What they're saying, that we give money to, we work with China, we work with Japan. We give money to Israel. Well, in fact, those are just, that's just neocolonialism. That's us trying to control other nations through giving them money so that we can tell them what to do. This is more within the logic of this racist, Oriental nuclearization that we've said. It will not cause a war. This will end the war because we'll end that society's problem that we have started within in the first place. Let's see. So going to war increases racism. Well, racism increases going to war. So let's stop with that screwy logic. It's racism that is the cause of this aggression. Let's see. So I think I've made most of the points. We've talked about the hedge. My partner has excellently stated how far this hedge goes into the idea that America is the center of the world. Because we're the only people who have the power to go out into the world. We must maintain our rulership. Well, we've already shown that just supercharges our link. Their critique of their point of hedge is just supercharging our link. It's showing us how racist this idea already is. The idea that North Korea is already aggressive is just feeding into this fear-based racism that's already inherent. We have shown that that is in fact false, and we need to stop treating other people, other cultures, other races as children. Thank you. Oh, do I have another minute?
You had no minutes.
I'm so sorry. May I keep going? I put 4 here and 5. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Okay. Psych. All right. So this one will give me a little more time to go into more specific things. We've talked about how they claim North Korea is aggressive. They've talked about the hedge. Oh yes, economic. Oh, that's so good. Okay. So economic. They have suggested that we will that through our plan, which is fundamental to end racism, is to or Oriental racism, is to it will decrease trade. Right? It will decrease trade with Oriental countries. So ending racism against Oriental countries will decrease trade with Oriental countries. 2 and 2 is 4. This will fundamentally increase trade with Oriental countries. So their point is it just doesn't work there. So yes. Oh, by the way, we talked about how I met those. All right, that's it. Go for us. Thank you.
Great. Great job.
Thank you. Sorry. Yeah.
Baby, you guys.
Are y'all going to disclose?
Yes,
Are we allowed to?
yes, it says right there, judges.
No, we can't.
We
It
can't.
says right on the thing.
Yeah, we can. But they wanna make sure they get the ballot in time.
Oh,
We can
okay.
talk to them, but as long as they get the ballot in time.
Oh, okay, I got you.
Would you like us to step out of the room as you
That'd be
decide?
nice.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.